Well, coaching rumors are heating up at Mississippi State. Two new names have popped up as potential hires. They're maybe not who you expect, but definitely worth a look. We'll walk through their backgrounds and why they're part of the discussion.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making the Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Jaron Spor. I'm a national college football writer at Athlon Sports. That's Landon McBride, and we've got a packed show for you today. Two new names have come up for the possible head coaching position for the baseball team. Also, Zach Selmon got an extension. We'll talk about what we feel about that. And then SEC football win totals from FanDuel have come out. We'll look at where Mississippi State is. Do we agree with it? Do we not agree with it? We'll talk about that a little later. But Landon, this coaching search is still ongoing, which we kind of figured it would. We even said we wouldn't be surprised if it lasted past the World Series, past the end of the whole season. We've kind of talked about the main ones. Obviously, Wes Johnson at Georgia has been a big one. Brian O'Connor at Virginia has been a mainstay. Tom Walter at Wake Forest. Chris Pollard at Duke. But there's been some two new names that were kind of thrown in the ring. One is Georgia assistant coach Will Coggin. Mississippi State fans should know him very well. And Troy head coach Skylar Meade. So kind of what is your thoughts on the two new names?
I think Skylar Meade is kind of a long shot. You know, I think it's one of those things, if it's more than a rumor, Mississippi State has reached out, done a little due diligence. It's more just you're looking at him because you're not a program that has to go to the to like a mid-major to a lower level to get someone.
Right.
So I think, but I mean, he's put together a good program. Troy is a very good team. I mean, we talked about them a little bit when we previewed the regional that Mississippi State was currently projected in. They were the 2 seed.
Right.
Regional.
And
so,
they're nationally ranked.
He's done a very good job with that program. So if you do go to a lower level, I think he'd be a great name to look at.
Yeah, and he's 40 years old, so he's not old at all.
Right. And you're not hiring some like 29-year-old kid that you're like, looking at.
But it is one of those that if you're going to go with a mid-major hire, he would probably be at the top of your list. They've made a regional in 2 of the last 3 years. He's kind of been an up-and-comer in the profession. He also was the pitching coach at South Carolina, and so he's kind of got SEC ties and experience there that obviously with some strong success in the Sun Belt. But it kind of seems like they're going to go for some bigger job. They're not going to go for like a bigger hire. That one's not a sexy hire, but it is one that I will say if they did make the hire, I wouldn't mind. I think he's done a really good job. But I think a lot of fans would be upset because, like you mentioned, Mississippi State's not a school that needs to go to the mid-major level. So if he is the one that's hired, he's blown them away.
Yeah, and it's because they feel he's the right hire. And it's not necessarily we got the biggest name. It's we have a guy that we believe in that we think is going to be here for a while, which that's another thing. When you get someone around that age, you're hoping that if you get them and they perform well, that's your coach for the next 15 years or something. And you build and you let them just really build the program. And now obviously Will Coggin, we all are familiar with him. And, you know, the other guy, it's nice to see they're looking at someone else on that Georgia staff. And one thing that popped out when I was kind of looking at him, you know, as a coach, he's known as a very good recruiter, which, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And he's a Mississippi native, played at Mississippi State. He was a student assistant here. He worked as both a volunteer and assistant coach in Starkville. But he's done a great job at Georgia. I mean, we talked about when we were talking about Georgia's head coach possibly being it, Wes Johnson, just how good of a program that's become. And he's been a big architect of that. I mean, he is the biggest reason, in my opinion, for their high-flying offense that they have.
Right.
He was also fantastic when he was at Kentucky. So even without the Mississippi State ties, I think he'd have at least a case for the job. He'd be a candidate for the job. He's really the only other assistant that's being mentioned outside of Tennessee assistant Josh Elander that we've talked about. But it's just, you know, it again makes a lot of sense, but kind of similar to what we talked about with Meade in terms of Meade is coming from a lower level head coaching position. Coggin would obviously be coming from an assistant job. Mississippi State's not a program that has to hire someone like that. They can get pretty much anyone they want.
Right. And I do think he would get fans excited, though, having one of your own come
Right.
back, especially when he has coaching experience and he's done well. I mean, one thing I found about him called him a hitting guru, which is something, I mean, and we've talked about a lot with Wes Johnson. He's the pitching guy.
Yeah.
That pitching staff. And so for, I guess Coggin is basically running the other half of that and got that offense rolling. And I do think it's interesting that the two assistant coaches that have been mentioned, Elander and Coggin, are both known as great recruiters.
Yes. Yeah. And that's something that you definitely need in this. You've always needed, but you definitely need it more now in this day and age. And it probably has to do with like how they can relate with the players more because of their age. They're both younger players, both guys that, these players probably know from watching them play, honestly.
Yeah.
But no, Georgia's like, I think they're number 11 in the country in runs with 458 runs this season. So they are a very good offense. And that's something that we've kind of seen go up and down. The pitching too, but the offense has kind of been up and down this year. And so he'd bring a spark there. I think he would have fans excited because of his experience playing here.
Yes.
But I think you'll have some of the fans be like, he's still an assistant coach. Like, let him go be a head coach somewhere, then we'll talk.
And kind of did you just hire him because you don't think he'll leave once he gets here kind of thing. So question, out of every name that's been mentioned, like who is one or two names that you were most excited about?
Yeah, I think Coggin would do a really good job. I really do. But I said this, I believe in the last one, I really like the Tom Walter potential.
Mm-hmm.
He's obviously in his 16th year at Wake Forest. He's built an incredible program there. They only went to 2 regionals in his first 12 years, but now they're a year in, year out regional.
Yeah.
And they obviously had a College World Series appearance, which was the first one since like 1955. They won the ACC regular season title for the first time. I just think with Mississippi State's resources, he'd be a home run hire. And then, obviously Josh Elander because of his recruiting prowess. But I think if you're going to go with a young assistant, I would go Coggin over Elander. And then I really like Wes Johnson, but, he's kind of like, no, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
But my question is now, real quick, because Coggin is now mentioned, is Johnson saying that because he knows Coggin wants the job and he wants to propel him for that job?
Or did they look at Coggin after Johnson told them no?
Possibly.
Like maybe they were kind of looking at both of them, but you want the guy with the head coaching experience. And once he tells you no, you focus your attention a little bit more on.
And Johnson could have said, I don't want it, but look at Coggin.
Yeah.
He would be really good there. We don't know.
Yeah, and that could be it. Especially, that happens a lot with head coaches if they have a good relationship with an assistant coach. Yeah. Once they hit a certain level, they start trying to push for those people to get jobs. It's the selfish coaches that try to hide those guys and keep them on their staff. I mean, you obviously want to keep all the great coaches you can, but there's some guys that when they hit a point, it's like, no, this guy needs a head coaching job and he needs it now. And that could be what is going on with Coggin.
Well, if an assistant coach gets picked up off your staff, that usually means you're having some good success.
Yeah.
And so they understand that with good success comes these players getting picked up. And so they understand all that goes into that. But who are the guys you are most excited about?
I mean, Walter's probably number one on my list, but to be a little bit different from the list you made, it's Dan Fitzgerald at Kansas.
Yeah.
A younger guy. I've talked about my love for the Dallas Baptist program a couple times, and he's coming out of that with the head coaching experience. Has turned Kansas to a solid program, and they weren't really known for having much going on in baseball.
Right.
So I think someone like that could be great when you give him resources. Same kind of thing with Walter, a guy who's built something up and has that analytics, movement, pitching movement, that angle, all of that. People who are really ingrained in that, you give them resources and they continue to do those things, usually produce great results.
Yeah, absolutely. And We did want to mention this real quick in this search. We talked about it a little bit at the end of, I believe it was yesterday's episode. The baseball projections have come out. On3 has one, D1 Baseball has one, Baseball America has one. I believe in all of them, they're a 3 seed. Mississippi State's a 3 seed.
Yes.
I didn't see them on the bubble of any of them. So that's obviously a positive. And the On3 has them going to Chapel Hill region, which is the 10 seed. They have 10 seed North Carolina as a 3 seed in that one. We mentioned D1 Baseball, where they still have them in the Tallahassee region, but Florida State's now a 4 seed instead of a 3 seed.
Okay.
And then Baseball America, I believe it was the Coastal Carolina region for them.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, and they have them as the 9 seed, Coastal Carolina, and then NC State is the 2, High Point is the 4. And so it seems like they're kind of solidified as a 3 right now.
Yeah, I think as long as you don't if they get swept by Missouri and then blown out in game 1 of the SEC tournament, maybe that's a different conversation. But I think as long as you take care of business, and you're going to be most likely a 3 seed.
Yeah. And that would be a really good spot, seeing where the season was just 2 weeks ago. So
yeah.
All right, coming up next, Zach Selmon signed an extension. Was it a smart move by Mississippi State? We'll talk about that.
The days are getting longer, the weather's warming up, and people are spending more time outside, which means it's the perfect time to refresh your outdoor space. Whether you're working with a big backyard or small balcony, WayFair has everything you need to make it feel more like you. WayFair's massive selection of outdoor essentials makes it easy to transform any space into your ideal summer setup. From comfy conversation sets to sleek dining tables and outdoor decor, they've got it all at prices that fit your budget. Grab a new patio dining set and some string lights from WayFair to help extend your outdoor space. And that is something I'm looking at right now, moving into a place with a backyard, looking for some more furniture to go on that moving from this small balcony I have right now. I love the mix of styles they offer. WayFair makes it super easy to find pieces that match your vibe without spending a fortune. The delivery is free and hassle-free, even for the big stuff. Whether you're entertaining guests or just relaxing solo, shop WayFair to help you unwind. Shop a huge selection of outdoor furniture online. This summer, get outside with WayFair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WayFair.com. WayFair, every style, every home.
All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so Zach Selmon has signed a contract extension. It's kind of been rumored for a little bit. Well, it's now official. This contract extension will now run him through 2029, and he will earn $1.25 million per year. I believe overall it was a 1-year extension and a $25,000 raise each year. So it wasn't like this massive extension, but kind of what's your thoughts on that one?
I mean, contrary to a lot of at least opinions that I see floating around online, I think he's doing a solid job. There's nothing that he's done that's blown me away and been like, this is an athletic director that you have to lock down, that you have to give all the money to. But there's also nothing he's done that makes me think he's not capable.
Yeah, he's so for people that don't know, because most people focus on the athletic director as the hirer. Like the hires have to be good or the athletic director doesn't do good. Well, that's part of it. The other part of it is raising money, getting donors to buy in, doing all that. He excels at that. Since he's taken over, they have an uptick in giving, and they're about to set a university record for fundraising this year. Another $1 million gift was just announced, I think yesterday, or maybe, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before that. They obviously have the $60 million one for the indoor practice facility, which they've never had. That is hoping to be up and running in 2028. So for that, he's amazing. He's done amazing with that. They are in a great spot financially because of what he's done. Now he's got to nail the coaching hires, and he obviously hired Jeff Levy, and that's still to be determined. it's not a bad hire because Levy was one of the, even if it doesn't work, Levy was one of the most sought after assistants in college football, and he was able to get him. And then now we'll see about the baseball hire. And we got to give him props, and we talked about this when it happened. He made the difficult decision to fire Chris Lemonis. And I know the fan base was kind of calling for it, and he made that decision, firing the only coach to win you a national championship.
Yeah, that's a bold move. And you're right. With the Levy thing, that was a big hire. It was seen as a home run at the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, fans always want to play the result. You have to learn to like grade the process. And what they did that year was great process. So whether it works out or not, still to be determined. And you're right. He's got the new facility coming in. He's doing great at getting the donations, but he has to hit this baseball hire. And it's not on the athletic director to do this per se, but some of those donations need to get in that NIL fund.
You're right.
And increase that. It's not really on the athletic director per se with how things work. That's why a lot of teams have these GM roles now, but you have to start getting some money in that NIL fund or you're going to get left behind regardless of who you hire, what facilities you build.
And we've talked about that. You can't just focus on just the facilities. And Mississippi State needed the upgraded facilities. They were one of the programs that isn't at a spot where they're good enough. We really need to just focus on NIL. And so he's now upgrading these facilities that needed to happen. After that, I don't see how he wouldn't increase the NIL because a lot of that money he's raising right now is going to have to go to some of these facilities. But as soon as those facilities are going, which they are, now all those donations that have seen an uptick are going to go to NIL. They're going to go to these other things. And so I think it won't be long before they've got a pretty good NIL program. We talked about it maybe a week or two ago where they weren't even top 25 in the country, whereas like 14 SEC teams were, and they weren't one of them. But hey, Ole Miss wasn't one of them either. So there you go.
They raised a ton of money for last year's football team.
Yeah, and that's pretty much all it went to was football team. But yeah, so I think he's overall done a good job, earned the extension.
Yeah.
But if you want the longer term security and the more money, you got to hit the hires.
Yeah, you have to hit the hires and you got to get that NIL fund boosting up, which you made a great point about how a lot of this donation money will most likely start going toward that now that the facilities have been upgraded. And if Levy just ends up being an above average coach,
right,
you funnel more money to that and maybe this facility keeps a couple more people or brings in one guy it wouldn't have otherwise. With the better NIL program, you're all of a sudden one of those teams that while you're not competing every year for an SEC title, you're the team that every 2 to 3 years you're in the mix.
Yeah, and we talked about this also like maybe a month ago about you need to become that program that teams hate to play. And that doesn't mean that you win every time. It's just they know when they play you, it's going to be very difficult to win. Especially in Starkville. And that's the program that I think Mississippi State can be. I don't think it's realistic to say they're going to be a year in, year out SEC championship contender. But I think it is realistic to say they're a pain in the butt every time we play them. They're a pain when we have to play them in Starkville. They win it sometimes. They lose it sometimes. We've seen Auburn be that kind of team. They're just a pain to play. That's what Mississippi State can be. And then, as we saw with Auburn, every now and then you have those magical runs. You have those magical seasons. You get that magical player. Obviously they had Cam that one year, but that other year that they made it to the national championship and lost to Florida State, it was like Trey Mason, who wasn't even he had a great season. Obviously, was a great college player, but he didn't do anything in the pros or anything like. And they had a Nick Marshall at quarterback who, when he went to the pros, got moved to corner because he couldn't really throw. But that's how they made it, and that's what. Mississippi State could do that. They could be a team that is just a pain. Boom, they take off a year, then they go back to being a pain. Hopefully you don't have the lows that Auburn has sometimes, but yeah, no, that's the program they need to be.
For more the Kansas State model. No one wants to play them. You're in every game, and about every 2 to 3 years, you are in contention for the conference title.
Yeah,
which, I mean, I don't know who wouldn't take that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, coming up next, FanDuel has released their win totals for every SEC team. Where does Mississippi State land, and do we agree with it? That's coming up. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, like I mentioned, FanDuel, they've released their win totals for every team. At the top of the list, Alabama, Georgia, and Texas, all at 9.5. Kind of surprised that people are back on the tide after last season. LSU, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, all at 8.5. Auburn, Missouri, South Carolina, and Texas A&M are at 7.5. Florida and Oklahoma are 6.5. Arkansas is 5.5. Kentucky and Vanderbilt are 4.5. So they think Vanderbilt's going to take a step back, even though they return a ton of players from a pretty good team last year. And then Mississippi State's at 3.5. So what's your initial reaction?
That the people who make that Vegas is really good at their job.
Yeah.
And, because we've talked all year about how we think this is probably a 4-win team, but we don't know where that 4th win is coming from. So, I mean, 3.5 is the perfect line. Because I could see them beating Arizona State. We don't really know what that team is going to look like post Scatabo.
Right.
And I don't trust Pittman or Taylor Green in Arkansas, which if that game was in Starkville, I would 100% say we would have it. Like, I would put money on us winning that one. But with it being on the road, who knows what that game is going to be.
Missouri's like. Another one that's that way. We don't know what Missouri's going to be. Arizona State, they lose Scatabo, was their best player, but they were like number 6 in the country in returning production, so they still return a ton.
Defensive player or something.
Right. So, no, that's a line that I'm not touching. Just because we've talked about, we think they can get to 4 wins, but finding that 4th one is difficult. Mm-hmm. And then that means you have to go perfect against Southern Miss, Alcorn State, and Northern Illinois. And we saw what Northern Illinois did just last year to Notre Dame on the road.
I mean, but 2 of those players are now on Mississippi State's team. So,
and then get them some insides.
Those are the 2 that were responsible for the upset. Let's be
right. But yeah, I mean, we mentioned Arkansas is a possibility, Missouri is a possibility, but those are both on the road. Florida is a possibility, again, on the road. Anything can happen in the rivalry game at the end of the year against Ole Miss, and you get a week off before, so maybe that's it. We talked about Arizona State. You're getting them early in the year when they're still trying to figure out what kind of team they are. They were a run-heavy team last year with Scatabo. Now I would assume they're going to be more of a passing team with Sam Levitt, who showed a lot of great things against Texas in that playoff game. And obviously they get Jordan Tyson back, who wasn't able to play in the Texas game at wide receiver. So we'll see what that is. Tennessee now is open because of Nico leaving, but I think their defense is going to be so good again. And in the Heupel
defense, though,
they did, but I think they're going to be good again. But Heupel and that kind of offense, we see it with Levy. They always produce a really good running back, or at least a good running attack. It's not always one running back; sometimes it's multiple.
How much fun are those Tennessee games once Levy gets this offense
up
and running? It's going to be like those old school. Early 2000s Big 12 games that are 56-50 at the final.
100 plays for both teams. No, it's going to be crazy. But that's not a line that I'm touching. If there was one that I would put money on, I would put the over on Oklahoma, because if Oklahoma doesn't get over 6.5, Brent Venables is fired.
Yeah.
And I would put the under on Ole Miss. I'm just not sold on Ole Miss. And I know we're the Mississippi State podcast, but I think Austin Simmons can be very good. I like him a lot, but they're 113th in returning production, I believe. And you lose that quarterback. I think Simmons has the potential, but I want to see it.
Hey, run him down. I mean, Ole Miss fans are already mad at us. Might as well just take a couple more shots. But I'd probably take the over on LSU, honestly. I think that's the team.
LSU's a good one.
I think that's the team to watch that people are kind of sleeping on, because Brian Kelly just hasn't quite got everything to click yet. But, I mean, you got Nussmeier coming back for a senior year. I think they could be the year they finally do put it together and make some noise.
Yeah, and I think Auburn, until Hugh Freeze does it, I don't know if I can pick over on 7.5. And, Vanderbilt, again, they returned almost everyone from last year. So we'll see if last year was a fluke. I wouldn't touch that number, but if I had to bet, I would bet the over on them, just because I do think Clark Lee's a good coach and they have things turned around. But if they go and they win only 4 games and it's the under, or 4 or less games, then it's like, okay, maybe last year was a fluke.
Yeah, and I'm not touching that Arkansas line either because who knows what's going on in that team.
Yeah, I think that's, unless Taylor Green can be a Heisman contender, I think that's a pretty good line right there. So, all right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Jaron. Check out my work over on Athlon Sports. A lot of college football writing right now, some NBA if you're into that. That's Landon. Follow us on Locked On Mississippi State. We're on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. We post daily videos Monday through Friday, so check that out. Also, we post a comment asking a question every day on our YouTube videos. Respond to those. We love your feedback. We've loved interacting with people. We got great response the last few videos, actually. And then we also
want to get rid of these screens, but it's just not an option for either of our setups right now.
Yeah. Hopefully, new house, we'll get a new setup that we don't have to do the virtual background, and then we'll be in good shape. But we are with you. We don't love it either. And then also we post a poll on YouTube as well. So go to that, click that, and if there's something you want us to talk about, let us know. We're game for that. But until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.